I'm going to teach you how to draw a rectangular prism in three-point perspective. There are two big reasons why this is important. The first one is that even though a lot of people say we see in two-point perspective, we actually see in three-point, and you can see that in the fact that when you go to a city and you look upwards at some skyscrapers, they seem to come together, as opposed to actually just going straight up in your field of vision, and that's because our field of vision expands as we see further and further outwards. The second reason is because if you're trying to get some visual idea across and trying to accurately represent something in the real world, you're going to want to draw it in a way that makes sense to our eyes and makes sense to your audience. So to start doing this, we're going to need to make 3 points. Two of these should be roughly horizontal to each other, and then the third should be somewhere vertically beneath them, and we'll label these points A, B, and C. And then we're going to need to start with the first corner of our rectangular prism. So that needs to be somewhere within this triangle. It cannot be outside these imaginary edge lines. And you're going to draw that there. Here we can even draw, this is the horizon line, so this is what you would see if you're going out in a field and you just look out across. So to start, we'll label this point D. To start, we're going to need to connect point D to all of our vanishing points. Very quickly. Boom, boom, and and that's going to be our first corner. And once we've done that, we need to pick a point so we can make our first edge of this cube. So let's start there. Let's start with the line from C to D. And we can darken this line up to make our first edge. And once we have this, we need to connect this point to our other vanishing points. So let's do that. And now we've created our first edge, and there's sight lines to the vanishing points. So once you've done that, let's take another point along a line that goes from D to a different vanishing point that isn't C. And we're going to create our first face of this rectangular prism. So let's pick this point right here. We'll call that second point we created point E, and then point F over here. And we're going to need to connect point F to our other vanishing points. So you take point F, connect it to point A, and then also drop it down to point C. And here you've noticed that we've created a face, so we can actually darken this up. And then there's an intersection here which we can actually call point G, and connect point G to point E and point G to point F. Now we've created our first face of our rectangular prism. Finally, to finish this thing up, we've got one edge that goes from D to C, that's to point E. We've got one edge that goes from D to B, and that's point F. So we're going to need a point that goes from D to A. And we'll slap it right there, and we'll call that point H. And once again, we're going to need to connect point H. We've got to do this through all of the other lines that we've drawn to point C, which is one of our vanishing points, and also to point B, which is our last vanishing point and creates our last edge and our last face, or our last two faces. So now we have point H, and now you see that there are two more intersections. We'll call this I and J. And we're going to need to darken up these faces And now we've created a cube or rectangular prism in 3-point perspective.